Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
Hello and welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Saturday, November 29th. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 663 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. Of course, appreciate all of those tuning in on all the different audio podcast platforms. And today we are previewing the New York Jets Week 13 matchup against the Atlanta Falcons. It is the 2-9 New York Jets, 1-5 at home, hosting the 4-7 Atlanta Falcons, who are 2-4 on the road this season. Tomorrow, 1 Eastern on Fox, just a little over 24 hours from the time of this recording. And as we always do, we will break down all angles of this matchup for the New York Jets this afternoon as they get set to play their 12th game of the season. Only 6 games remaining, including this one, as the season continues to roll on here for the Jets. Before we get into that and dive into the injury report and what to expect in this game, as we always do, just kind of dump some of my overall thoughts here to open things up today on the podcast before we dive into the nitty-gritty of this matchup. A couple things here to note. Falcons come into this game 2.5-point favorites, so they are the road favorites, which means the New York Jets are home underdogs. Over-under for this game set at 39.5. ESPN Analytics matchup predictor is giving the Atlanta Falcons a 57.4% chance of winning, and the New York Jets a 42.2% chance of winning. So Jets here clearly enter this one as the home dogs at home, as the home dogs here in this Week 13 matchup against the Atlanta Falcons. And you look at the two quarterbacks in this matchup, you've got the battle of the unks, a little bit of an unk bowl tomorrow afternoon out at MetLife Stadium. 36-year-old Tyrod Taylor will draw in again as the starter for the Jets, while Kirk Cousins will get another start with the Michael Penix knee injury. 37 years old for the Atlanta Falcons. And when you look at both these teams, both have had far from the seasons you would want, far from the seasons that you'd hope for. This is a New York Jets team that started the year 0-7, started to gain some positive momentum with the win against the Bengals, and in the win, albeit ugly, against the Cleveland Browns. And in back-to-back games against the Patriots and the Ravens, you saw some good things, but ultimately ended with losses, and ultimately you sit here with 6 games to go, 2-9 on the season, nothing really to play for other than looking and evaluating for improvements on this coaching staff and trying to find long-term solutions at certain positions on this roster. And from the Falcons' perspective, this was a team that started the year hot, right? 3-2 to open up the season, was playing good football, beat the Bills on Monday night. That was the peak of it. Looked like they were headed in the right direction, looked like they could potentially be in the mix in what has been notoriously for a while now a weaker NFC South, but looked like Penix continues to play well, the defense continues to play well. They could potentially make some noise and make a strong playoff push. And you fast forward now to Saturday, November 29th, post-Thanksgiving, post-Black Friday, and where we sit with the Atlanta Falcons, 6 games left. They're a mess as well. 4-7 now on the season. They are 1-5 in their last 6 games after starting 3-2, including a 5-game losing streak that was finally snapped last week against the New Orleans Saints. And now with Penix done for the year, Kirk Cousins takes over, and things look really bleak if you're Raheem Morris and the Atlanta Falcons. And you kind of see here what team comes out tomorrow afternoon, what both these teams look like. And what's so tough from the Falcons standpoint is they don't even own a first-round pick. So at least the Jets standpoint, you can have the, okay, better draft position, things like that. Atlanta, that's not even the case. And shifting back over to the Jets' perspective, look, win or lose, you want to see continued progress. You want to see some of the positives that we have seen over these last couple of games. And I know the bar is so low, and it's frustrating as a fan every single year to have the bar so low and sit here in late November and talk about things like this as opposed to talking about a playoff push or other things. But the fact that the New York Jets aren't getting embarrassed in these last two games is a positive. The fact that they've been competitive, the fact that there have been just a few plays, which is the difference, and that's what ultimately separates the good teams and the bad teams, is the fumbles, the penalties, those little plays, those little margins. If you make mistakes in those areas, that's where you lose football games. And that's what's been taking place for the New York Jets. But overall, this has been a team that since that win over the Bengals, so the last 4 games, you've seen improvements in a lot of players. And more importantly, you've seen some steady improvements in this head coach. There is still a lot of work that needs to be done. There is still a lot of things that you want to see out of this coaching staff over these next 6 games as you move into the future of this team heading into 2026. There's more that you want to see. There's more that you hope this coaching staff can show you. But the fact that they've been in these games, and you look back at earlier in the year where got blown out against Buffalo, you got blown out against Tampa for the most part. Dallas was ugly, a complete disaster. You had some of those really bad blowouts. The fact that that's not happening now against a Patriots and a Ravens team, I know they lost on Thanksgiving, but a Ravens team that is still a lot better, a lot more talented, does speak to some of the coaching improvements. Now, there is still areas Glenn needs to be better in. And we've talked about that out of the post-game show last week, was some of the 4th down situations. Knowing when to be aggressive, when not to be aggressive. Tanner Engstrand had a really rough week last week. You need to see him bounce back. So there still are things that you need to see here. But all in all, there's been some progress. There's been some steady positives over these last 4 games that you hope can continue over the next 6. Whatever the results are, you hope you can continue to see this team fight, keep these games close, and they'll have some opportunities here to win some games. And that's another thing. You know, we could sit here all we want and say tank, no tank, debate all you want. But the reality is, just prepping the tank crowd, in these next 6 games, the Jets probably have 2 more wins. Buffalo and New England will be tough. Those are probably losses. But if you look at their next 4 games, Atlanta, Miami, Jacksonville, New Orleans, you can probably find 2 wins in there. And there's a very good chance Sunday is one of those wins. And then pick between potentially Miami or New Orleans. So just prepping everybody, there's a high chance this team doesn't go 0-6 the rest of the way. Even over their next 4, you're probably looking at 2-2, which is about where we thought this team would be. 1 to 2 wins the rest of the year, be a 4-win team. Anyway, as we move into players and offense, defense, what to look for in this game, you look at the injury report for tomorrow afternoon's matchup. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. Is one of the most notable ones on the injury report because they didn't practice Friday, popped up late in the week with a hip injury, so he's questionable for this one. Harrison Phillips still dealing with that same foot injury, didn't practice Wednesday but was limited on Thursday, full participant on Friday. The normal weekly routine for him, dealing with that injury, managing that foot injury. He's questionable but should be good to go. Joe Tippmann was on the injury report but is good to go. He dealt with personal reasons, and he will be okay for today's, or rather tomorrow's matchup. As for Atlanta's injury report, the most notable name here is Drake London, dealing with a knee injury. He has been ruled out. Josh Woods dealing with a hamstring is ruled out. And Malik Verdon dealing with a shoulder also out in this game. And Chris Lindstrom, guard dealing with a foot injury, is questionable for tomorrow's matchup. Notable there, starting right guard. There's been a lot of games this year for the New York Jets where they faced beat up offensive lines. Now, the rest of Atlanta's starting five offensive line is healthy, but there has been a number of games where the Jets have faced teams missing at least one starter up front. Some games more than others, but this is potentially another one of those games. Didn't practice Wednesday, was limited the rest of the week, so we'll see when kickoff happens tomorrow what his status is for the Falcons. But other than that, those are the injuries. Light report for the Jets. You hope Brownlee can go. You want to see him play out the rest of this season. Has had a couple good bounce back week last week after being back in the nickel, which was good to see. Really struggled as an outside corner. And from the Falcons standpoint, obviously a big blow with Drake London. We'll see how that affects this game. You start with the quarterback. You start with Tyrod. Really, I just want to start with Engstrand, the offense as a whole, and kind of blend it all together here. And we'll move on to the defense and get you on your way here on this Saturday morning. I thought last week the New York Jets could have been a lot better play calling wise. I thought Tanner Engstrand had a really, really bad week last week. I thought it was one of his worst weeks with the Jets this season. And that was pretty disappointing because you have an upgrade at quarterback in Tyrod Taylor. Look, we all know Tyrod Taylor is not an elite quarterback. He's not the answer. He's not the future. He is a 36-year-old journeyman quarterback who is a backup and plays like a backup. But his passing ability, his ability to read the defense, his ability to run an offense is at a competent NFL level. Something that Justin Fields struggled to do was read a defense, get the ball out, processing, all of those different things. And you put Tyrod out there so you could evaluate a little bit more what you had in this pass game. And what I hated last week out of Tanner Engstrand was the amount of runs early on in the game. Now, I want to make it very clear. That's what this Jets offense is about, is running the football, establishing the run. 100% get it. But you have to adjust. It wasn't working. The New York Jets were way too reliant early in that game last week on the run and not enough through the air. And the few times they did throw it, they had success, which was another aspect in the questionable play calling. The most questionable play call of them all was the string of play calls, I should say, was the 3 straight run plays to Isaiah Davis. Unacceptable. Can't happen. And you can't run it 3 times in a row and turn around and punt on 4th down. And the other 4th down that you did go for it later in the game, you didn't even have Breece Hall on the field, your best weapon on offense. So I thought last week, in some areas, Tanner Engstrand was probably overthinking it, being a little too overcomplicated with some of the runs, getting Isaiah Davis more involved. He was trying to maybe get a little bit too fancy or a little bit too different, I guess, than what typically works for this offense, which isn't much, but you get the point. Their first 22 plays, 16 were pass plays, or 16 rather were run plays, 6 were pass plays. Now, you're going to start running the ball in this game and trying to establish the run. I get that, but in the event you're having struggles establishing the run, sometimes it takes the pass game to open up the run game. Some games it's run opens up the pass. Some games you have to adjust, and it's the pass that opens up the run to keep the defense guessing. Baltimore wasn't budging at all last week with the run game early on. So that's something to keep an eye on early in this game against this Falcons defense. Tyrod last week, 17 of 28, 60.7% completion percentage, 222 yards, a touchdown, 1 interception, 7.9 yards per attempt, 82.7 passer rating, and a 70.9 QBR. There were some misfires. There were some big hits that he took. There were definitely some good plays, some plays where he stepped up on 3rd down and made some big throws. John Mechie, A.D. Mitchell, both were able to get involved. So look for that here. Look for him to take some chances, take some deep shots. We all know what Tyrod Taylor brings to the table, and be more aggressive than what this offense had with Justin Fields leading the way. When you look at the rest of this offense, right, we talk so much about this being an evaluation phase at this point in the season. I'm really looking forward to John Mechie tomorrow afternoon. He had the nice couple of catches against New England where he went out, had, the 3 catches for 45 yards and the touchdown. The touchdown was a little bit of a broken play, but you saw some good things out of Mechie. He was open. When he was throwing the ball, he made some plays. All good to see. Last week was even more impressive. 6 receptions, 65 yards, 1 touchdown. So in the last 2 games here for John Mechie, he's had 9 receptions for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow afternoon what Mechie can do against this Falcons defense. And hopefully the opportunities that they give to him. Target him a ton. Force feed him. Get him the football. Get him opportunities to continue to show what he can do and the plays that he can make, and continue to show that he has an opportunity to be a long-term piece for this New York Jets offense. Ideally, potentially wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. But you look at Mechie's numbers these last 2 games, you tally that across 17 games, that's 825 yards and 67 receptions. Now, it's also 17 touchdowns. He's obviously not scoring a touchdown every single game, but still, that's impressive numbers over a 2-week stretch. You look at his 3 games total as a Jet, even going back to the Cleveland game where he only tallied 1 catch, 527 yards for 46 receptions across a 17-game slate. So the fact of the matter is he's been really, really good. He's been used as this team's number 1. What you've seen out of John Mechie these last 2 games is what you saw at Alabama. That was Alabama high day 2 pick John Mechie. And you hope you continue to see that as we go on here these next 6 games, including tomorrow. A.D. Mitchell, same thing. Both these guys get open, get them the football. And they also have to finish their plays themselves, right? Not only can they get open, but finish the plays. That's always been an issue for them. Mechie's been able to finish. A.D. Mitchell made a couple good plays. Both of those guys are 2 players that it's tough to watch a 2-9 Jets team. It is. It's tough to look forward to games with the Jets when they're 2-9 and playing this bad. But John Mechie and A.D. Mitchell are guys that I look forward to watching moving forward here on Sundays as the rest of this season plays out. Breece Hall will continue to say until we're blue in the face. Utilize him in the pass game. Utilize him as a receiver. Last week, he had that great drive, was going to be an elite Breece Hall drive. And then fumbles at the 2-yard line, and the New York Jets turn the ball over, and the game is over. But finished with 4 catches for 75 yards. Had 44 yards on the ground. Not a ton there. Longest run of the day was 9 yards. Like I said, Jets run game as a whole was struggling last week. But Breece on the year still 766 yards, 14th in the NFL, and he's 14th in carries. So inside the top 15 in both those categories. Continue to utilize him more in the pass game. Don't wait until the 4th quarter to utilize Breece in the pass game. Open things up early on. Get him going early in this game. First couple plays, get the ball to Breece Hall in space. We all know how dangerous he can be. You saw that last week throughout his career. He just needs to be used more consistently in that area. Same thing with Mason Taylor. Want to see him get a little bit more involved here. Last week had 3 catches for 21 yards. Can he get to what we saw in the Miami and Dallas games where he was at the 5 to 6 catch mark for, 50 to 60 yards? Even the Cincinnati game, 5 catches, 34 yards. Can we get him back up to that 5 to 6 catch mark where he's getting targeted 7 times-ish in that area? I would like to see that for Mason Taylor, specifically on 3rd down. I mean, last week, 4th down play call, tight end, safety blanket type player is potentially the move. Very questionable 4th down play call, but Mason Taylor as well. All of these guys, Arian Smith too. You look at him as a name to continue to watch for. Hasn't played a ton. I don't even know if it's really worth mentioning much about Arian Smith because At this point, it's clear he's just kind of in the role he's in, and it's a redshirt year for him, and you kind of look for 2026 for him to play a little bit of a bigger role. But you look at the way this wide receiver room shaping out, he's probably your wide receiver 5. Most likely, assuming you have Garrett Wilson, insert wide receiver 2, Mechie, AD Mitchell, and an Arian Smith. That's probably the way things are shaping out anyway. And you look at this Atlanta defense. Look, this was a defense that started the year very, very good. Jeff Ulbrich revenge game tomorrow. DC for the Falcons, obviously now back at his old stomping ground, similar to Saleh. Very good start. When they opened up the season 3-2, this defense was humming, and they were doing a lot of really, really good things. But you look back at these last couple of weeks now, and they've started to struggle. I just want to give you, throughout the losing streak, some of the scores. 20-10, 34-10, 24-23, 31-25, 30-27. They had a stretch there. 3 of those 5 games, they allowed over 30 points in that losing streak, including 2 straight against Atlanta and Carolina, both in overtime. So this is a defense that, as much as they started strong, has started to see some struggles as the rest of the team has struggled. So that is something that I'm interested to seeing tomorrow. How does this defense look against this offense? Because if you would have told me the Jets played the Falcons week 2, probably a different story than playing them now, where the defense has seen some struggles the last couple of weeks. In terms of the Jets defensive side of the football, obviously the biggest blow for Atlanta is no Drake London. So Darnell Mooney will take over that number 1 wide receiver role in place of Drake London, and had a good game last week. 3 catches, 74 yards, a big 49-yard grab, and a touchdown. Mooney has been their number 2, steps in now as the number 1 for this Falcons team. You also throw Kyle Pitts in the mix as well. 49 receptions this season, 459 yards. We kind of know the story of Kyle Pitts' career so far, especially the Kyle Pitts fantasy managers. The inconsistencies, the not being utilized enough, all of those different things that have come with Kyle Pitts so far in his NFL career. You look at the last 2 games, he's been nowhere near very 14 yards against Carolina, and then followed it up with 25 yards last week. He has yet to have a game this year of over 100 yards. He's only caught 1 touchdown. Kyle Pitts in Atlanta has been kind of just plateaued at this point. I think he is who he is. The role he plays in the offense is the role he plays, and that's about it. Now, your biggest threat is Bijan Robinson, who remains as one of the elite backs in the NFL, and I think what makes Bijan so dangerous is not just his rushing ability, but his receiving ability. You look at the rushing numbers, 172 carries this year, 853 yards, 4 touchdowns. 5 yards per carry, which is a career high for him. And it's really taken off this year. He's 8th in yards, 11th in carries, inside the top 30 in touchdowns. You look at his receiving numbers, 49 receptions, 543 yards, 11.1 yards per reception, and 2 touchdowns. So you tally up his total numbers. He's got 221 total carries, or total touches rather, 1,396 yards, 6.3 yards per touch, and 6 touchdowns this season. Dual threat receiving and running overall at 23 years old, the 8th overall pick in the 2023 draft out of Texas. Bijan Robinson is as good as advertised. And, you know, you had the first year where he wasn't quite being used properly, followed it up with 1,400 yards last year, and is now following that up with another monster season this year. And you expect him to play a bigger role tomorrow because there is no Drake London. So Bijan immediately turns into, and he has been even with Drake London, but with Drake London out again, he turns into the focal point in that offense, both from a rushing standpoint and, of course, a receiving standpoint. We'll give you Kirk Cousins' here's numbers quickly here. In his start last week against the Saints, 16-23, 69.6 completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, a pick, 199 yards, a 107 passer rating, and a 38.2 QBR. From a Jets defensive standpoint, I look at Juwan Briggs as a guy to continue to look for in this game and continue to look for the rest of the season. What he's been able to do from a pass rushing standpoint has been amazing. That has been such a pleasant surprise, and you give a ton of credit to Darren Muji for that because he makes that trade in Harrison Phillips and Jarvis Brownlee Jr. and some of these in-season, right before the season trades that Darren Muji has made has really, really paid off. When you look at last week against the Ravens, he finished with 1 sack, 3 pressures, 1 TFL, 1 QB hit, and 5 total tackles. He also had 2 quarterback hurries and a 74.7 PFF pass rush grade. But that wasn't just last week. This has been a common theme all year for Juwan Briggs, especially over since like week 7 or so. These last couple of games, he's really taken off, which is really, really good. But you look at his entire body of work this year. 3 sacks, 20 pressures, 6 QB hits, 4 tackles for loss, 15 QB hurries, and 18 total tackles. A 72.9 overall grade and a 73.4 pass rush grade. Both are improvements over last year. So what he's done from getting to the quarterback has been really, really good to see. Harrison Phillips is another one that I think you have to bring back in the offseason. Not only what he does on the field, but his leadership off the field has been huge for this New York Jets team. What do you see out of these linebackers tomorrow with Bijan and what he brings to the table and his sideline to sideline speed for these Jets linebackers are going to be tested tomorrow. Quincy Williams has been playing more like 2023 Quincy Williams. Jamie Sherwood still has not been good. It's very interesting. There's a real chance that you're looking at this Jets linebacker room and it looks totally different next year. Quincy's not returning. I don't know if they'll bite the bullet on the Jamie Sherwood contract, but neither of these guys, Quincy is playing better, but he's not going to be here. Sherwood hasn't played well all year. You wonder with the contract if they move on and they completely revamp it. But either way, for tomorrow's game, their sideline to sideline speed is going to be tested. Continue coverage as well. Can they get off the field on third down? AZ Thomas, Malachi Moore, continue to look for those guys. Can we see anybody but Tony Adams tomorrow? Anybody. Dean Clark, Jarius Monroe, anybody but Tony Adams. The Tony Adams reps, the Tony Adams role in this defense needs to end. It needs to stop. And I said that in the postgame show, and I'll continue to say that. It is clear Glenn is trying to really change over this roster and really figure out what they have and what they don't have in this roster. And Muji is as well. And I give credit for some of the guys that they've brought in. Harrison Phillips, Juwan Briggs look like hits. Jarvis Brownlee Jr., he had the 2 bad games against the Browns and the Patriots, but last week was much better. And there's been more good than bad from Jarvis Brownlee Jr. These next 6 games, you want to see more good, right? But so far, that's a trade that looks like it's headed in the right direction so far. But Tony Adams, I'm going to throw 3 names out here. Tony Adams, Michael Clemens, and Alan Lazard still on this roster is malpractice. We all said this during training camp. Neither of these guys were any good. And now they're just holding up roster spots. Like anybody but Michael Clemens, anybody but Alan Lazard, Brandon Smith, Jamal Pritchett, anybody. Nobody's saying that they're going to be great. Nobody's saying that they're even going to play much. But Lazard holding up a roster spot and either not playing like he did against New England or having 1 catch when the game was over against Baltimore in the 4th quarter for 9 yards, that's just a waste of a roster spot. Same thing with Tony Adams. Now, you're still going to have him active just because you're not going to go down another safety. But Dean Clark, Jarius Monroe, anybody but Tony Adams, please play safety. Get time at safety. And that's not because we think Dean Clark's great. It's because Tony Adams is terrible. He's not going to be back next year. And you might as well figure out what you have in one of these young guys. Who knows? Maybe Dean Clark can show you that he could be a viable backup, a viable depth piece, right? You know what Tony Adams is. You know what Michael Clemens is. You know what Alan Lazard is. You know what all 3 of those guys are? They all stink. So it's kind of to end it here. And we talk about, right, some of the improvements that this coaching staff has made. That is one of my critiques, though, with Glenn. Preach accountability, all these different things, and you keep some of these guys on the field. You keep these guys on the active roster. That's not a good way to go about it. I like that. Tony Adams specifically, because he plays the most out of all those guys. He's starting. And I understand it's because Cisco's down, but still. And Isaiah Oliver stinks too, and he's not really a guy that you would look for because he's on a one-year deal. He's a veteran. He's not coming back, but most likely. But a Dean Clark, any of these guys, can any of these guys play safety? Give them an opportunity, right? Who knows? Maybe they could be a backup for you, a depth piece. So that's my final thoughts. I actually think the Jets win this game tomorrow. I do. Right, I talked about these next 4 games. I think this is a game the Jets win. I think realistically the Jets win this game and they probably beat New Orleans. I think they probably lose to Miami and lose to Jacksonville on the road. But I think they beat Atlanta and I think they beat New Orleans. I think the Jets will be able to get home a little bit to Kirk Cousins. I think they'll do enough on offense, but I do think this is an ugly, low-scoring game. I'll go Jets 17-14. I guess I'll make it dramatic. Nick Folk game winner. Why not? So I do think the Jets win. 17-14. This is the first time this is when you know I'm feeling that they're actually going to win. This is the first time that I've predicted the Jets to win since week 1. Since that point, I have not predicted them to win. I thought about doing it against the Browns, and deep down inside, I did have a good feeling they were going to win that game, but I didn't predict them to win. And I was wrong. So I'm going to go with a Jets win today. Although anytime I pick them to lose, obviously I hope I'm wrong. Tomorrow, we'll see if my win prediction's correct. Low scoring, 17-14. Ugly game. I think there might be some rain out at MetLife. So it's, must-see TV when the 2-9 Jets team led by Tyrod Taylor, the 36-year-old gunslinging quarterback, faces a 4-7 Falcons team without their number 1 receiver, playing the backup in Kirk Cousins, 37 years old. That's where we are as Jet fans here in November. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. What are your thoughts on tomorrow's game? Your big keys, anything else, what you're looking for, let me know down below. Appreciate your support as always. We'll be back right after the game to recap it all as always. Until next time, JETS.